The challenge of reading Michel Serres is the same as the challenge of, yeah, I think, eco-criticism in general, which is how to articulate the hidden costs and damage of linear thinking and objectivity and rationality without relying on rationality and objectivity and linear logic. So he's, I think, working from the same page that we see here articulated by Bruno Latour, another prominent French theorist. The classical definition of society, humans among themselves, makes no sense. The state of society depends at every moment on the associations between many actors, most of whom do not have human forms. We use reason and logic and objectivity to define who we are in language. We name ourselves we, justify and assert ourselves in language, but evade our non-human associations. Our expressions are really the opposite of what they pretend to be. They don't assert our reality, but evade our reality. Makes hence Sarah's reference to this ad depicting communications media as a tool for control, submission, domination, mastery. We have become obedient puppies, passively listening to our master's uproar. We never talk anymore, that's for sure. To keep us from it, our civilization sets motors and loudspeakers screaming. Is there anything simpler and more monotonous than this history? In a way, he's suggesting an inversion, a reversal of the relations between humanity and the larger world of nature. The megaloposes are becoming physical variables. They neither think nor graze, they weigh. Thus the prince, formerly a shepherd of beasts, will have to turn to the physical sciences and become a helmsman or a cybernetician. It's another word for a navigator on a ship. Cybernetics is a skill, a navigational skill. Piloting doesn't mean control. Cybernetics. It means capacity for negotiating. So Serres is asking, how do we begin to navigate in a situation where civilization and barbarism have been reversed in a way? Civilization is just this kind of barbaric perpetuation of mastery for its own sake in a compulsive, droning, mechanical way. It's about negotiating two different kinds of noise. The noise of the droning babble of culture, but then there's the noise of the outside world that culture is trying to silence and suppress. Serres is calling on us to hear this noise, the weight of our consequence in the larger world, even to feel the nausea, the sickness, cultural noise is inflicting on the larger world. Wordsworth has an interesting poem on the genesis of this kind of cultural noise. Anecdote for Fathers, showing how the practice of lying may be taught. This is precisely about that difference between children and adults that we've been discussing. Difference between planning and play. It's like Wordsworth's We Are Seven, a dialogue between an adult and a child. The adult is communicating an imperative to be rational, to be linear and objective, that the child resists. And it's important that the adult speaker here, as like the adult speaker in We Are Seven, is inspired to write the poem by the child's own playfulness, is contagious. My boy was by my side, so slim and graceful in his rustic dress, and oftentimes I talked to him in very idleness, playful idleness, excess without purpose, without meaning, playful, curious, being in the world for its own sake. A day it was when I could bear to think and think and think again, with so much happiness to spare I could not feel a pain. What I like about this is he's demonstrating this playful idleness by turning thinking into a rhythm. No longer a linear processing of time, fixing things objectively and rationally, but thinking as a kind of dance, as a rhythm, like walking. Here, as in We Are Seven, the adult ends up censoring the child's for the playfulness that originally inspired the speaker, censors the child. Speaking in language compels the adult in both of these poems ultimately to censor the child for being irrational, for defying objectivity and linearity. And that's what's meant here by lying, teaching the practice of lying. Here, the adult asks the child, does he prefer the farm or the seaside? The child is nonplussed, flummoxed. What is that even supposed to mean? They're just two different things. Why should I prefer one or the other? This compulsion to categorize, evaluate, and standardize, or what Michel Serres describes as reducing the luxurious proliferation of the world's multiplicities to the desert and solar uniformity of our laws alone. The term desert makes me think of Borges' parable of the map again, the perfect map of the world. It makes me think about the war in Ukraine and refugees, people that no longer belong in the world because they're artifacts of artificial political maps. They've become defined more by discredited maps without place in the world because they're defined by obsolete maps. Fighting over maps litters the world with refugees, refuse, the pollution that, according to Serres, fills in the distance between the rational and the real. By pretending or trying to force the world to conform to our rationality and objectivity, we fill the world with the pollution, the cost of covering up that gap. And trying to force the boy to make a decision, to justify his decision. The speaker here, just like the speaker in We Are Seven, trying to force the girl to be rational, to conform to a kind of mechanized counting. What gets censored in We Are Seven is the girl's sympathetic imagination, that family is a matter of bonds that don't obey strict objective accounting. And we still have relationships with dead ancestors. And family is not just an objective, empirical state of affairs, but subjective expression that can't be so mechanistically counted. Here, what the adult speaker seems to be censoring in the child is a non-hierarchical perspective on the world. The seashore is the seashore, the farm is the farm. I don't need to evaluate the two. I don't need to reduce reality to evaluative concepts, or the child's perspective can take each unique thing on its own terms. So this is the noise that would disrupt, rationality, the child's indiscriminate appreciation for each unique thing. that jams the communication of the master's voice. So in this situation, lying is taught in order to silence that noise of promiscuous attentiveness and curiosity about the uniqueness of everything. In We Are Seven, the speaker all but explicitly aligns the girl's voice with noise, referring to her words as trash. Speaking with her is like throwing words away. So in these poems, Wordsworth is like Michel Serres. He's using language to evoke an other relationship with nature, a natural contract, but not putting it directly into words. He's instead pointing out how words function by actively evading, suppressing, and silencing the noise of nature, the noise of attentiveness to nature. What we're supposed to learn here, the best lore I could teach, is actually what he cannot say. This is what he's actually asking us to hear, what can't be regulated by the master's voice and language. John Keats's La Belle Dame sans Merci is also about the allure, the nauseating allure of a voice outside rationality. The speaker here, the night, is like Odysseus hearing the voice of the sirens. This is cool. These other faces coming out of the environment. The only real ghosts in the poem are other warriors like the night, pale echoes of himself. Pale kings and princes, pale warriors, death pale were they all, they cried, La Belle Dame sans Merci, thee hath in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. So good. Keats is such a genius. I mean, he wrote this poem in a letter. He was writing a letter to his brother. It just dashed off this poem and made jokes about it. And then it results in all this. In this one, you can see the pale kings haunting him behind her. So he's actually haunted by himself more than what he thinks is the exotic other. And you can see he reflects the pale warriors and princes, not just because he is a pale knight like them, but because he repeats, like the dog in the ad, his master's voice. He repeats verbatim the terms of the disembodied narrator's initial questions. What can ail thee, knight-at-arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. So, like Wordsworth in We Are Seven, where the speaker says, I'm throwing words away. This poem is trash. I thought I was going to write about a charming woodland child, but she's refusing to make sense. And I can't speak to her. It's just like garbage language. Same thing here. We thought we were getting a romance, but the speaker's left just babbling mechanically, like a ventriloquist dummy, the terms of the question posed to him. Totally hollowed out emotionally. He's like traumatized, stunned. Gawain and the Green Knight is similar to La Belle Dame sans Merci in that it's about a character consumed, diseased by civilization. Gawain accepts the Green Knight's challenge because he wants to prove himself. It's all about the standards of honor, living up to a kind of contractual obligation, a social contract. And like La Belle Dame Summer sees, Sir Gawain in the Green Knight is about kind of the rationalizations that Gawain tells himself about the requirements of honor and fulfilling his contract to the Green Knight. Likewise here, it's all about rationalization. He is trying to tell himself that he is the hero of this romance, even though if you read closely, you can tell the reality is much more ambiguous. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. Made a garland for her head and bracelets too in fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet and honey wild and manadu, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. So we don't get any language from her. We get strange language, but the way in which he formulates it, this is such a brilliant formulation. His explicit confidence that she avows her love for him, the explicitness of his confidence betrays his actual doubt. If he was so sure, would he need to say? Would he need to translate? I'm sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. I'm so sure that's what she meant. So in this fantastical little romance poem, Keats is touching on something very deep in the experience of relationships. What Claire was talking about is even those I love the best are strange, nay, stranger than the rest. So, same thing, The Strange Girl and We Are Seven is, affirming is this family bond that resists translation, or love that resists translation. So, if she doesn't speak regular language, if he has to translate it, what does she? Like the little girl in We Are Seven, she sings. She makes sweet moan. She is associated with sex, I think. This is about the physical, emotional confusion of sexuality. But I think most precisely, it's about a kind of rhythm, pacing. I made a garland for her head and bracelets too. It's kind of grooming, ornamentation. It's important in Gawain too. The green belt. His paintings are all like Baudelaire's To a Woman Passing By as well. About this moment of kind of magical vision and the question of the validity or believability of the vision. Desire for confirmation, certification. I need to know it. I want to know my love. I want it validated. I don't just want the experience. I want proof that it is objective and real. Ratification in language, a kind of legal certification. Like Keats's poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, draws us into the complex temporality of life, emblematized by, the temporality of hunting, the change of seasons, and the temporality of sexual seduction. That these are complex in the same way that like song and dance cannot be reduced to objective, linear, rational accounting. All these works resist narrative closure in order to draw us into this weird, emotionally and physically and imaginatively messy temporality of passion, of nature. I think here we're getting an idea of what it might be implied by a kind of contractual relationship with the bigger, more mysterious world than the one recognized by objective language.